connect with me on LinkedIn, talk some trash. I love it, but big basketball fan over here. I did notice that. All right. Well, I think we probably can get started. We're going to let people kind of, trickle in as they become available. But I first just want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. We have an awesome topic that we're here to talk about: 3 steps to building a lucrative enterprise go-to-market motion, the road to 100 million ARR and beyond. This is the goal, I think, for just about every B2B SaaS company, whether you're there today, whether you're looking to get there. There's so much in here that I think is awesome, actionable content that you can take back into your day-to-day, that you can apply to help build an enterprise go-to-market motion and get your team aligned on moving up market. So before we kind of get into everything, I wanted to make a quick introduction. My name is Cody Bernard. I'm head of marketing at CloseFactor, but more importantly, I have with me today Zena Davé, director of revenue marketing from Vercel. She has been an awesome partner and friend of CloseFactor for quite some time and has been very gracious with her time for joining us today to talk about how she and her experience at the prior companies that she's been at and her current company have been able to build really successful go-to-market motions for the enterprise. So just before I pass things over to Zena, I wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items. This will be recorded, so if at any point you have to jump off, we will very much send you a recording after the fact. Feel free to drop your questions into the chat throughout. And as those start to surface and pop up, I would love for Zena or myself to answer those questions live. So we might ask you to come off mute. If you're not comfortable doing that, no worries. We can very much answer the question without having to go through that process. And then lastly, the content today is going to take about anywhere from like 15 to 25 minutes. There's, like I mentioned, 3 steps. We really want to get into the nitty gritty, the meat there, but it's very actionable, very quick and to the point. So we're going to be able to get you out of here probably around the 1:30, 10:30 Pacific time mark. But we definitely want to make sure that we're leaving it open for questions towards the end. So if you want to stay on, ask myself or Zena any questions. We're here, for the full hour, take all the time you need. But with that, I'm going to pass things over to Zena. And Zena, you can take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen and drive?
Yes. Let me stop sharing real quick.
Cool. All right. All right. Oh,
Makes
you know
my life
what?
a lot
I
easier
think
as well. And let me
it
share
looks.
questions.
Sorry.
You're all good.
Okay, there we go. Cool. All right. Can you all see the speaker slide?
We can.
Okay, perfect. All right, cool. So I'll just do a really quick intro of myself and then we can dive in. So nice to see y'all here. Thanks for joining. Like Cody said, I'm Zena Davé. I'm currently running revenue marketing at a company called Vercel, the creators of Next.js, which y'all might be familiar with. Prior to joining Vercel, I was at a company called LaunchDarkly for about 6 years, running revenue marketing there. Joined the company as the 12th employee and kind of saw the company scale from about 2 million in ARR, actually a little bit less when I joined, past the 100 million ARR mark. So lots of tangible learnings, some things we'll kind of share and walk through today. And yeah, that's kind of the high level. So we'll dig in. Also joining y'all from Oakland, California, home of the, ex-home of the Warriors. So it's a fun time to be from here. Sorry, Cody. All right, cool. So let's start with kind of getting started with demand capture, and we'll kind of talk about what that means. So a lot of companies that find like early product market fit really start their growth journey by mastering demand capture. So what is demand capture? For those who don't know, it's really about reaching and capturing prospects who are actively looking for a solution that your product maps to. So this could be someone doing a Google search for your solution. At LaunchDarkly, for example, that would be someone searching feature flag tool and then going on to capture that person's interest by directing them to your product with, say, like a paid search ad, or alternatively through solid SEO and high rankings. This can also be a bit less of a direct search type of scenario and more about kind of creating organic content, hitting the speaking circuit, fostering community engagement in spaces like Twitter or Discord, kind of just tapping into and capturing an existing audience that's in market for your solution and kind of already, ready to buy what you're offering. This image, it's a little grainy, apologies, but this is a Google Trends chart that kind of shows over time as search volume for feature flags increased. So did volume for LaunchDarkly. And it's interesting actually now at Vercel, you'll see a similar trend with volume for Next.js and Vercel. So essentially what this is kind of showing is the growth here is nearly the exact same rate. And for this LaunchDarkly example, we had really attached ourselves to the category, the kind of feature flag, feature management category really early on. You can see this chart starts all the way back in May of 2017. And this really allowed us to kind of start early on as the leader in the space. So whether you've created a new category or attached yourself to an existing one, kind of finding that early product market fit and really mastering your demand capture practice is really one of the most effective and namely efficient, which, efficiency is king this year, efficient ways to kind of grow early on. So I'll pause there. Any initial questions? Cody, I know we're kind of keeping it conversational. Anything you'd want to add here?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest piece for me is kind of focusing around what are people actually looking for and, looking for you in particular versus something that's a little bit more, I would say like tactical or solution oriented, like there is a balance, right? But like, as you start to see kind of your brand getting out there and becoming more and more of a hot topic or trend, that's a good sign, right? Like that means that people actually know you built awareness, you're starting to build your brand in the market, which is only going to help you associate yourself with bigger and bigger problems or solutions that people are looking to solve for. So this trend is super cool. We're actually, monitoring the same thing on our end as well and making sure that, as we start to build our brand as a super early stage startup, that we're kind of going in the right direction, right? Because if we're not, that's clearly a problem and we need to address that when that time comes.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, moving right along. All right, so you've grown rapidly now. We've sped ahead. You've got a steady stream of inbound interest. Now what? So I think we all know the saying, what worked yesterday won't work tomorrow. This is definitely true. What got you to 25 million won't get you to 50. What got you to 50 won't get you to 100. What got you to 100 won't get you to 1 billion, and so on. So, to kind of go back to the demand capture piece, that can only take you so far unless you're really, really lucky. But moving up market, requires more than luck, not to diminish what goes into kind of driving a steady stream of inbound. There's definitely a lot more to it than luck. But moving up market requires, a really intentional, strategic, aligned, this is really important, plan and strategy. And this is really where demand generation, kind of enters the scene. And I think demand generation, it's tied to marketing, but kind of view demand generation as kind of all encompassing across the entire go-to-market function at a company. So this slide here is kind of like making the case for enterprise. Again, this is kind of assuming that I'm talking to folks who do have a relatively steady stream of inbound, who do have, like a PLG go-to-market motion or a community-led go-to-market motion, or, maybe a really, really fantastic SEO content strategy. So if this isn't you, that's okay. Maybe you're starting with enterprise demand gen, but this is kind of just, laying the foundation, assuming that you've got some element of a demand capture motion, as well as, some stream of inbound. So I think, at earlier stage, primarily PLG or community-led businesses with a healthy kind of volume or stream of inbound, oftentimes most of the pipeline or revenue that you're kind of bringing in does come from unpaid, or they're paid but not super targeted channels or tactics. So part of building enterprise demand generation does involve spending money, and then also kind of getting a little more targeted with your segmentation and plan. Again, making the case for enterprise, if you will. Typically enterprise average sales prices, average deal sizes, average contract values, whatever 3-letter acronym you're using, are typically at least 2x, 3x-ish the size of your kind of SMB or mid-market deal sizes. So what this means is if you kind of master this motion, you need less volume in order to hit your revenue targets. So this is kind of take some of the stress off at the top of the funnel. Also, when you're moving up market, just to kind of emphasize, it is time. I actually used to say it's time to focus on, the following, but I actually think it's important to say like time to bring added focus. You still do want to keep your PLG flywheel running if you've got that, or your community-led flywheel running. Enterprise demand gen doesn't replace PLG. It doesn't replace community-led growth. It really is an additive. I think if you can master both or all three, or if you have some other go-to-market motion that I don't know about, I'd love to learn about. These things all kind of work together in tandem. So as you are moving up market, I would say, it's time for an added focus, resourcing, targeting, allocation of spend towards the enterprise and your enterprise prospects. Cody, anything to add there?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for you. And I think it's always been, in my experience at, startups and B2B, what are those like telltale signs that you're being pulled up market versus, hey, internally, we're making the decision that we want to move up market? Because there's, this idea that it's really hard to force that, especially if you're not prepared, both from a go-to-market perspective, but also if like your product isn't, built to support the needs of the enterprise. What do you think? What do you look for in regards to, hey, this is actually the right time for us to be moving up market based on what we're seeing from maybe the deals we're closing or some of the requests that are coming in that we are looking to prioritize?
Yeah. Yeah. So, at least from what I've seen, I think when you kind of start building the stream of inbound, if you start seeing a decent amount of that actually coming from the enterprise segment, coming from bigger companies, people who are like kind of wanting to give you a lot of money. I think it's a good indicator that, we actually do have product market fit within this segment. It might be a good time to build a more intentional motion here rather than just kind of relying on the sort of, random inbound that comes through. Starting to think through, what's my content strategy here? Do I want to build out a sales team? Is it time to build a strategic sales team? If you're kind of seeing these types of audiences come through organically, I think it's a good indicator that you could build a real motion there. That's kind of just one indicator.
Yeah, I think in my experience, it's the most exciting thing in the world when all of a sudden you're starting to see your pipeline getting filled with more logos from the enterprise. And you're like, oh, okay, this is, the right thing for us. Like we should definitely do it. But the work that goes into it and trying to make sure that you're ready to support, on the go-to-market side has always been like a frantic process, but it's fun. And it's a new thing for you to explore. It's a new challenge for your business to take on. And I think we'll get into, the nitty-gritty of how to go about doing that, which is kind of, why we're here today. But it's always an exciting time, especially when you're attracting new segments. And it's not even just the enterprise, right? Like it could be within specific verticals or within specific regions or, new functions within a department or within a business that you might have, some level of applicability with your product. So just being able to capitalize on those moments, I think is key, and being able to move fast and figure it out as you go is always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. So now selling to the enterprise sounds great. Yes, it does. But where do you start? So we're going to kind of dig into the marquee title of the session. So this is obviously very high level, but if anyone's interested in chatting, digging deeper on any of these topics, I love talking about this stuff. So feel free to reach out separately, but we'll do kind of a high level overview for today, and hopefully kind of gets the wheels turning for some of y'all. So 3 steps to building a lucrative enterprise go-to-market motion. So we'll start with step 1. So might sound kind of obvious to some, maybe not to others, but you really do need to start with defining your ideal customer profile, ICP. I think there are actually 2 things I would mention here to start with. One, you need to define and understand your existing ICP. So who are your current customers, who's paying you, and then where do we want to go? Is that different than what our ICP looks like today? So you can actually kind of have 2 ICPs or 2 elements of an ICP. One being, this is our existing ICP, And then the other being, as we move up market, here's where we need to be going. Here's who we would like to be selling into, given the strategy that we have, and kind of understanding where are those gaps and what are those differences. But at its core, an ICP is really answering the questions, where and with who do we win? So the first kind of step to defining your ICP is sort of conducting an analysis to determine, like, what are the traits and characteristics of our closed won customers. So a couple of things you can sort of start tapping into, you know, what firmographic, demographic, technographic data patterns can we spot and leverage. Things like, you know, our buyers, what percentage of them are ICs versus managers. I remember at a past company, we realized after doing this analysis, we had a bunch of ICs buying the product and leading the charge. And before running the analysis, sales folks would actually reject opportunities we'd passed through where the contact on the opportunity was an IC. So it's important, I think, to have this sort of data-driven analysis, taking yourself out of the kind of assumptions you're making, and just sort of let the data do the talking. You know, that's just like one example. What industries, company sizes. I think also something important to tap into is what closes for, you know, meaningful ARR, as well as what closes quickly. You have targets that you need to hit, you know, probably quarterly. So if you're just focusing on closing accounts that take a year to close, you know, they might close for a lot, but if they take a year to close, you know, you're going to be missing for a few quarters. So you do need to kind of balance prioritizing accounts to go after that will close in a timely fashion, as well as, you know, spending time on maybe some of those bigger accounts that take a longer time to close, but might be worth more ARR, for example. And then second, I think it's really important to call out constantly iterating, learning from wins and losses. You can also actually do analysis on late stage opportunities that maybe didn't make it all the way to close. I think those still provide some really solid data inputs as well. So just constantly iterating. I think a solid cadence for analyzing your ICP is at least once yearly, but if you can, refreshing it, you know, 2 times a year, maybe even quarterly if, you know, you're seeing a lot of changes quarter over quarter.
Yeah, I feel like
oh yeah, go ahead, buddy.
on that piece, it's always interesting because, like, I'm a product marketer by trade, and I guess like the cadence at which, in theory, you should be looking at your positioning is quarterly. And if you're already doing the work around positioning, or if your product marketing team is already doing that work, this analysis goes into that as well, right? Like, so you need to kind of look into your ICP and figure out, like, how is it evolving so that we can adjust our positioning to make sure that it still, you know, works for the business. But again, you know, having those resources to be able to look at that stuff quarterly is usually pretty rare. And I would say if you have the resources to do it, it's 100%, you know, valuable, because it will pay dividends as you start to look at your funnel and how things progress through the funnel. So that's just kind of, you know, my experience with that. But we did have a question come through. Joycey was wondering, do you ever entertain having multiple ICPs, like one for different segments, or do you have one that just evolves and gets, you know, like larger or sophisticated, for lack of a better word?
Yeah. So I've personally never had multiple ICPs. That being said, I think you could definitely make a case for that. Namely, like less so for, I would less so have a different ICP for a different sales segment, unless your sales segments are, you know, vastly different. But more so if you have, you know, different suites of products, or if you have different plans that attract different types of people or different types of companies. Like, for example, an enterprise plan, not an enterprise account, but someone on an enterprise plan, that ICP might look completely different than people who are on your free offering, or, you know, your kind of starter plan or pro plan offering. So I think in that sense, that would make a lot of sense, because you're kind of then building out the ICPs for the different types of products you're trying to sell, or the different pricing plans you're trying to sell to. And then that would inform your targeting and your strategy for each, if they are vastly different. So I definitely think it makes sense to entertain having multiple.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, cool. So step 2. So this one, strategically prioritize your accounts. So this is obviously built out for a B2B audience. I always say, in B2B, yes, we are selling to people, but we are selling to people who are buying on behalf of their company for the most part. So it is really important to understand the account-based strategy. So we, all kind of know the phrase ABM, account-based marketing. People are now calling it ABX to be inclusive of all go-to-market functions. But essentially, I think, kind of step 2 here, after kind of building out that baseline ICP, is starting to build your ABX engine. And you're doing this across, again, all go-to-market functions, marketing, business development, sales, should call out partners as well here. Pretty much any sort of business facing team. So what do these kind of various steps look like in strategically prioritizing your accounts? So 1, determine account and lead level intent signals, including things like product usage, first party intent data. So that's people engaging with your web properties, third party intent data or third party activity. I think this is a huge one that can go missed sometimes. This can include things like what are keywords people are searching that might kind of map to your solution but aren't directly what you solve for. So, in LaunchDarkly's case, as an example, we were really interested in identifying people and accounts who were searching for or reading about or blogging about CI/CD as kind of like a topic, because that was a good indicator. They'd probably also be in market for a feature flag management solution, as an example. So kind of understanding, which activities indicate buying readiness, or, kind of indicating that an account is in market. And you can kind of leverage this based on, again, closed won analysis, ICP analysis, as well as intent signals that you think kind of indicate, these are things that we're seeing with our closed won customers, and kind of map that back to your targeting and segmentation strategy. 2, defining and developing an understanding of buyer groups. So we all know, for the most part, the more people involved in a deal, the more likely it is to close, probably for a bigger amount. So who, in addition to your economic buyer, is influencing deals, and kind of building an understanding of buyer groups. And then again, kind of mapping that into your targeting strategy. This is particularly on like the personas and audiences piece, like not only understanding, here's our target persona, but also do you understand, here's our target buyer group. And then sort of building that into your scoring methodology for your account prioritization. 3, leverage your ICP and intent data analyses to inform account and lead scoring models. I also think your lead scoring account scoring model should dynamically update as best you can. Ideally, it's updating in the background all day, every day. It's okay if you can't do that right away, but that is kind of the dream. There are amazing tools out there that can help you do this. 6th Sense is obviously a big one. Close Factor is obviously a big one. I've heard great things about Mad Kudu as well, but haven't personally used them. So this is not an ad, but there are lots of tools that can kind of help you build out a dynamically updated account and lead scoring model. And then lastly, ensuring that you're weighting your scoring in favor of your ICP fit and in-market accounts with activated buying groups. So what this means is you've got your ICP fit accounts. This is just kind of like static data. Well, actually, this can dynamically update if you are able to kind of build that out. So the more customers you're closing, your kind of ICP fit or account scoring model is dynamically updating with respect to the fit score. And then second, the in-market account scoring is basically building out like a way to identify account stages. So is that account, in a super early awareness stage, or is it currently evaluating vendors in your space? That's, kind of 2 extreme ends of the spectrum. But understanding how you're scoring accounts on that sort of spectrum. And then lastly, of course, understanding the buying groups, and then figuring out how to understand whether or not the buying groups at these accounts are activated or not. Taking all of those inputs into an all-up account score, and then sort of leveraging that to prioritize the accounts that are on your sort of target account list across marketing, sales, partners, BDRs, etc. Cody, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest problem I would say for sales team today is like prioritizing accounts. And I think there's a million tools out there that, say that they can help you do that. But having kind of the fundamentals down or without having those fundamentals, it's going to be a really big hill to climb. Like I think going after the wrong accounts is probably the number one reason why reps don't hit their number today. And same on the marketing side, right? Like if you're not targeting the right people or the right accounts who aren't, one, a good fit for you, or two, ready to buy, makes it incredibly difficult to sell into those accounts. So I think it's just such a key piece to it that seems incredibly obvious, but there's so much that goes into prioritizing your accounts or having that level of information to set your sales and marketing teams up for success. So this has been pretty key in my experience in working with sales and marketing teams, making sure that you have, the right list to actually go after with the right information to kind of fuel your outreach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like it's kind of easy to bias, of course, how you're thinking about prioritizing accounts. And also over indexing on places where you've already had success, and then kind of like that sort of bias compounds. So I think this is where the sort of data-driven ICP analysis, the intent signals, the scoring methodology kind of helps keep you honest. You can really kind of limit your TAM if you're kind of allowing your biases to take over with respect to your prioritization or targeting strategy. So I think it is really, really important to nail this early on. And again, the dynamic updating can help, kind of transition or change it as you get more data points or as your ICP starts to shift over time.
Which sounds like so counterintuitive, especially to, a marketing leader who's like, hey, I want to cast a wide net, right? Like, or I want to make sure that I have enough pipeline to feed my sales team. It's as much as it like pains us trying to reduce the amount of people you're going after, but making sure that the ones that you are the right people actually will pay higher dividends than going after a large group of individuals. So I saw something out there that was really a really cool term. It's not just about like total addressable market, but your total relevant market, like people that are actually right for you. So, always quality over quantity, but it's a hard pill to swallow. It really is, because you want to try to cast a pretty wide net. But we do have a question that came in. What is your approach when sales and marketing leadership or leadership in general are on different pages in regard to account strategy and prioritization? And I think it kind of feeds back into kind of like who we should be going after.
Yeah. So I think this is very common, actually. And oftentimes marketing teams will have their strategy and sales has theirs. And there's definitely some overlap, but with respect to an account prioritization strategy, it can often be very disparate. So I think in terms of my approach here, it's just kind of starting early and often, well, not early and often, starting early and often, but starting early, and iterating often. And making sure that marketing and sales are in total lockstep with respect to the account prioritization approach. And this is where I think having the ABX driven engine across all of go-to-market really kind of ensures that this is constantly happening. Again, from a B2B lens, if you aren't doing an account-based approach across go-to-market, it's likely that you guys will be going after two separate groups, or marketing won't really be supporting the accounts that sales is going after, or sales might be going after accounts that maybe aren't the best places for them to spend their time. So I think in terms of the approach for like when sales and marketing leadership are on different pages, it's really just making sure that doesn't happen. And it doesn't mean that sales is right or marketing is right or sales is wrong or marketing is wrong. It's more so just coming to the table. And I think this is honestly on the marketing leader's plate, to be honest, as the person who should be, fully having a pulse on the market that you are marketing to, is coming to the table and saying, hey, what is your approach? How are you prioritizing? What are the inputs you're looking at? Offering some perspective, and then ultimately driving the account prioritization strategy, and bringing sales along, the entire time on that journey.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Cool. All right. So step 3. So this is, we have all of this amazing data now. We've got our ICP. We've got our accounts prioritized. Now, how do you actually action your analysis and your target account list? So I will say that your go-to-market plan should essentially optimize for moving your ICP fit accounts through the account funnel, doing so quickly and efficiently. But first, I think you need to define what your account funnel stages are. So we're all pretty familiar with like a traditional funnel. So, leads come in at the top, you score them, they become MQLs. MQLs, get qualified and worked. They become, sales qualified leads. Then they get qualified by an AE. They, get pipeline attached. They become sales qualified opportunities and so on. It's kind of a traditional funnel. You can kind of name it different things. The account funnel concept, I think, is a little less common or a little less understood. There can be different names for different stages, but ultimately, I think if you are going to have an account-based engine across all of go-to-market, it is important to build out an account funnel with very, very well-defined stages. So these are like blanket terms. A lot of tools like 6 Sense or Demandbase, they'll use this type of phrasing. But let's kind of talk through what each of these are. So the awareness stage is basically when an account becomes problem aware. So this is just basically an account or a person at an account understands that they have a problem. Oftentimes there are, and this is like the same in a personal life, honestly, but you have a problem, but you don't know you have it, or you don't know how to define it. You don't know how to talk about it. You don't know what to search for to solve for it because you don't even know what it is. So I think this is a big part of marketing's job, is to pretty much educate the TAM that you're going after as to here's the problem that you have. Here's how to think about it. Here's how to define it. And when you're defining it, always thinking about how your solution maps into solving for it. So some effective motions here for kind of going after or building awareness with your target account list is, thought leadership, top funnel content, surfacing up top funnel content through paid digital channels. Events and trade shows are obviously fantastic for this, just talking to people out in the field and educating them on the problems that they have, helping them define how to talk about them. Email marketing can be really effective here. Content syndication is fantastic if you're trying to kind of pad your database. So these are just kind of a few, channels or tactics that are really effective at the awareness stage, and trying to just bring the kind of total market of accounts into a phase where they at least even know they have a problem that you can solve for. So that's kind of the awareness stage. Next is consideration. So this is when an account has defined their problem. Well done. And now they're starting to actually conduct research into how to solve for it, looking for a solution. They probably don't know, what vendor they're going to go after. They've probably not started, official evaluation or anything like that, but at least they're starting to, map or research how to solve for this problem that they have recently defined or understood that they have. So effective motions here. Webinars are really great. This is a good example of one here for maybe a marketing or sales leader at a company who says, oh, we need to go up market. What should I do? Where do I even start? This webinar is purpose built for that audience. And, I'm not saying that Close Factor is doing this by any means, but unintentionally, this webinar is not about Close Factor. It's about a concept, but ultimately this is a great way to bring people who are problem aware into kind of the know that there is a tool called Close Factor that helps you solve for these things. So kind of like a lightweight way of tapping into an audience that is problem aware. Field events are great for this. So just kind of like smaller, intimate gatherings, bringing together like a curated list of people who care about problems like the ones that, you solve for. Direct mail, people have thoughts, I think, strong opinions on direct mail one way or another, but I think this can be really effective too, and kind of just sort of building awareness with audiences who are problem aware. And then of course, digital marketing, you'll see digital marketing kind of through at every account stage with different types of offers depending on the account stage, but middle funnel offers, again, content that is built for people who are already problem aware. So it's less like top funnel, less thought leadership content, a little more meat for people who kind of already understand the problem, but are more interested in reading about solutions. Third, decision stage. So this is where I think sales comes into play. At LaunchDarkly, we actually got our account funnel to such a good place that we only had sales and BDRs working on accounts in decision stage or beyond. We found that, accounts that aren't in this stage are just not ready to talk to sales unless they kind of self-select, raise their hand, come inbound. Accounts that are not at this point are probably not the best fit for sales. We want sales to be focusing their time on the best possible accounts that have the highest likelihood of closing fast. So marketing was really focused on awareness, consideration, driving accounts through to decision. And once we got them there, that's when AEs, BDRs would kind of come into play. So decision is when an account, they are problem aware, they've researched solutions, and now they're at the point where they're narrowing down what vendors they might kind of start bringing in to solve the problem that they've identified and now understand. So again, this is the perfect time for a salesperson to come in and try and sell. VIP field events are a fantastic motion here. This is kind of a deal acceleration motion, something higher touch, bringing customers and prospects who are really, really hot together. So customers can kind of do the selling for you naturally. Curated direct mail. Again, these kind of like higher touch motions can be incredibly effective and worth that additional spend, of course, because you're kind of taking a bet on accounts that you think are most likely to close. And then again, you'll see digital marketing everywhere. The only difference here is the offer is different. So this is kind of more bottom funnel offers. At this point, I feel confident I can serve up like a demo request ad to an account and pay to do that because I think they are in their decision stage. You can even do like a paid, gift card for a demo at this stage. I wouldn't do it before that, but at this stage, it can be kind of the, little thing they need to push them to talk to your sales team because they're kind of finally ready. They've done their research. So these are all kind of like higher touch motions that you're taking bets on because, these people are, ready to buy. And then last is purchase. So this is when an account is ready to purchase. Ideally, you don't have any accounts in purchase stage that a salesperson isn't engaged with. If for an enterprise motion, that is. If there is an account you identify that is ready to buy and no one's talked to them, jump on it ASAP. It's likely that if an account is in this sort of stage and you haven't spoken with them, they're probably going with a competitor. But it's not too late. So these are kind of the two stages I would say. Make sure your sales team is all over. You're setting up your tooling and your systems to make sure it's really easy for them to be notified of these things. They don't have to go searching. They just kind of get delivered. We want to make salespeople's lives as easy as possible so they can focus on the selling. And digital marketing. Honorable mention here. I think the one thing with the purchase stage is the multi-threading motion or the buyer group expansion motion. It makes sense for digital at this point. So maybe you've got one person in an opportunity, but that selling into a broader buying group increases your deal size, moves it along more quickly. So you might kind of run digital motions or even event motions to try and bring more folks into a deal at this stage. So that is kind of the long-winded, also kind of high-level way of looking at, I think, an account funnel and kind of how to action your ICP analysis as well as your account prioritization process. Cody, anything to add? Any questions?
Yeah, we did have a question come through, and I think this is probably speaking to points 1 and 2, but kind of also touched on within 3 is how have you seen companies handle inbound or surging accounts that have high intent but don't fit your core ICP?
Yeah. So I think this is where having like a really solid scoring methodology helps you not really have to think about this from like a human lens. So I would say, if they hit a certain score threshold and they do that because they're really high intent or they're surging, I mean, that's still a great account because they've hit a certain score threshold. How they hit a threshold, doesn't really matter. It does eventually refine your scoring. But I think, you give more points essentially to an account or a person who has super high intent. So if that's the way that they get to your sales team is through the intent angle, maybe not like the firmographic, demographic, technographic angle, it's totally fine. They're still super qualified. They've kind of self-selected into that is what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, cool. So just a couple of small things to leave y'all with. These are just kind of bonus steps. Here's my Steph Curry gift for you, Cody. So one, I would say invest in your tool stack. I know we don't like buying tools, especially in 2023, but there are just certain ones that are going to make your life a lot easier, and investing in them earlier on is I think something I would personally recommend. Happy to talk through what these are in the future, but I'll just kind of leave you with this. I have opinions, but it depends on where you're at in your journey, what your budget looks like, what your go-to-market motion looks like, et cetera. So I won't give like a one-size-fits-all answer here. Two, never treat anything like it's done. When I say anything, I mean, it's really anything, but in this case, I think it's like websites, landing pages, processes, scoring, your ICP analysis, like nothing is ever done. It can get stale really fast, especially in the world of B2B SaaS. So just constantly test, experiment, iterate, measure your experiments, of course. It's okay if something sucks, but make sure you document that, kind of feed that into your motion moving forward. And then, of course, ensuring you're being prospect customer driven at all times. I think invest in BDR enablement if you have a BDR team or motion. It's really, really easy for marketing and BDRs to be totally disparate and have like barely any communication. I've heard of some of the best B2B SaaS companies out there who their BDRs never talk to the marketers, or the marketers have no idea what the BDRs are doing. I think this is a really integral relationship. Oftentimes the BDR orgs are some of the most junior folks at the company. They need a lot of hand-holding, coaching, mentorship. Also, BDRs can end up being some of the best marketers. So I think this is just a really great relationship to kind of double down on and invest in. Full funnel marketing. So I think it's really easy as a marketing team, especially on the revenue marketing side. I've been guilty of this to, hit your pipeline target, high five each other and turn around and go home. But it's sort of like, there's that gif of the person shooting the basket and then they turn around and high five each other and it doesn't go in. In this case, I think I just messed up my monitor. Sorry. Did it go away?
No, you're still up.
Oh, good. Okay. But yeah, in this case, I think if the pipeline you're driving doesn't end up closing, then it's not working. So in terms of full funnel marketing, I think just making sure your marketers know how your programs and your spend is affecting actual revenue, not just pipeline, and definitely not just lead gen or MQL gen. And then lastly, I think developing an early warning system for funnel leaks, any spend that's super inefficient, any program types or tactics that aren't working, just being super, super aware early on if something is not working or if something is broken, patching that up and making sure that your funnel is as efficient and performant as possible. And then lastly, leave y'all with these. I think, we all know this is the year of efficiency. It used to be growth at all costs. Now it's a focus on efficiency and doing more with less. So I think just kind of, again, this goes back to the earlier note of enterprise doesn't replace PLG. It doesn't replace community-led growth. It's just an additive. So continuing to invest in SEO, community, web conversion optimization, your product flows, et cetera. Super, super important. Two, I think pipeline diversification is so important, and understanding where your pipeline comes from. Actually building out sub goals within your pipeline target is super, super important. You don't want all of your pipeline to be coming from outbound, for example, and kind of high-fiving saying, we hit our target, when in reality, you're spending a bunch on marketing programs that are driving nothing. So I think just kind of making sure you really have a full understanding of where your pipe is coming from, where you can optimize, where you might want to, turn some channels down, kind of mixing and mastering, if you will, to kind of get that perfect balance. Database orchestration, automation. My old CMO used to say, go find pipeline in the couch cushions. or under your car seat. I love those kind of phrases. I think what this basically means is you've got a database, turn on some flows, some little automations to just kind of build some always on flows that you can rely on to drive steady pipe. So this could be like if you got a demo request or a contact sales request that doesn't convert after 30 or 60 days, you have an always on flow that re-engages those people. And then you can kind of, build assumptions that say, okay, 10% of those re-engaged folks always convert. So it's just sort of like a source of pipe that you're turning as always on. And then lastly, I think just continuing to test, experiment, measure, iterate. Again, things can get stale really fast in our line of work. So just constantly iterating. I think also it's really easy to get kind of caught up in your like kind of limited lens of where you are and the company you work at, the team you work with, excuse me. I find it really, really useful just to go out of my way to find peers in the space to chat with and just sort of exchange best practices and say, hey, what's working for you guys? What are some tests you've run? Metadata actually has a really great demand community, like a Slack community that people are always kind of posting best practices and have questions. And I think just kind of having that space to learn from others in the industry is really important as well. So I will stop there. That's a lot longer than 30 minutes, sorry. But thank you guys for joining. And yeah, let me know if you have any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Zena. Really appreciate it. Yeah, that was great. I think I learned a ton and I'm hoping everyone else that joined did as well. We did have one question that come through the chat. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in. We'll make sure to stay on to make sure that we can give you some answers. If you have to jump, no worries. But one of the questions came through that says, what metrics does one measure to figure out if you got the ICP right?
Yeah. So I would say essentially, if you look at your closed won customers, so after you do your ICP analysis, of course, once you start closing more customers, it's essentially like what percentage of my closed won customers are from my target accounts that I've built out from my ICP analysis. Does do my new customers kind of fit with that ICP that I built, and building a way to sort of measure the percentage of accuracy there. And I think that applies to the intent signals too, not just the ICP analysis, but also are the intent signals I've identified actually showing a propensity to close, and being able to measure that as well.
Awesome. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But if you do have to hop, that's okay. We have 10 more minutes, but I want to make sure that we're being cognizant of everyone else's time. So we'll make sure that we send out a link to the recording after the fact, but I really appreciate everybody jumping on. And Zena, thank you so much. This was super helpful. I learned a ton, and I'm sure everyone else did as well.
Thank you so much, Zena.
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to hang out with y'all.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Cool. All right. See ya.
Bye.